Welcome to another edition of TFLtalk, and since we just got back from Moab and this is the middle of Jeep Week, we thought we'd do a little bit of a rundown as to what we experienced this week in Moab. And I'm going to start with the most controversial thing first, Nathan, and that is, of course...
Oh, the Renegade.
The Renegade, yes.
I'd like to show you the all-new 2015 Jeep Renegade Trailhawk model.
Yeah, so what you're looking at when you see the Renegade being revealed and everything else is basically a Fiat 500L platform that's hooked up with components from the Dodge Dart and also from the Jeep Cherokee. And it's basically a car that can kind of do off-roading.
Yeah, it's a Panda, right?
It's a Fiat, well, it's like a Fiat Panda. They share some components as well. Now, Jeep says that they have a version that is a Trailhawk version that will be off-road worthy. We have yet to experience that, and frankly, it looks a little low to the ground. What was it, 8.5 inches of ground clearance?
They said it's got the right approach angles, the right departure angles. It's got the train management system in there. I mean, we saw it being unveiled in Moab, and the funny part was there was a moment where he opened up the hood, and I went to get video of it.
No. Because it had a diesel in it, which is for Europe only, not for us.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the rub starts. It's one of the few Jeeps, if not the only Jeep, recently at least now, that's actually manufactured in Europe and brought back to America. And Jeep is such an iconic American brand, right? It's basically a brand that started with the troops in the Second World War. The Jeep, the Willys Jeep, and then eventually it morphed into a very off-road worthy vehicle. And it just somehow seems odd that Jeeps are being made in Europe and brought back to America.
With that said, I kind of disagree with him because I don't really care as long as it's a good vehicle that's coming here. My deal is that Jeeps have been built all over the world for years. In fact, even in Egypt, they have military vehicles that are Jeep-based, and they're out there. But to Roman's point, there's no manufacturer even in North America or South America that's building the vehicle. So we're hoping that maybe in the future, if they sell as many as they think they're going to sell, and they think they're going to sell them like gangbusters, and frankly I agree, maybe they'll start building them here in the States.
Yeah, it's a subtle point. You're exactly right. Jeeps have been built around the world. In China, they used to build the old Cherokee, and then that got kind of lost with the divorce from Mercedes. But the fact is, there's something very different about building a Jeep in Europe and bringing it to America.
I agree. It's a little bit unusual, but at the same time, in terms of a vehicle for you guys to use, I think it's the right vehicle for people who just want to put a toe in the water and drive a Jeep, but at the same time, not drive a Jeep.
And so this is where Nathan and I really differ. We've been going to Moab how many years, Nathan?
5 years.
5 years.
For 4 TFL cars to cover Moab.
Yeah, for the Easter Jeep Safari. And in the 5 years that we've been going there, they have, well, if I'm looking at it objectively, they have not introduced a Jeep that is more off-road worthy than the Wrangler. In fact, every Jeep that they introduced, that's the Cherokee, that's the Renegade, has become less off-road worthy, right? What they're doing is they're taking that Jeep brand, and they're doing very, very successful things with it. They sold millions of Jeeps, and I think 1.5 billion in profits last year for Fiat from Jeep. It's working. So they're taking that Jeep off-road brand and they're stretching it to encompass more crossovers, the Cherokee, to encompass more smaller vehicles. You know, think of the Renegade, think of cars like that. And I'm just wondering how far you can stretch that rubber band before it breaks, before the Jeep guys say, you know, this brand isn't anymore about off-road vehicles. It's now just about kind of building crossovers and sticking a Jeep badge on it and calling them off-road worthy.
I disagree. I know how much work they put into research and development with these vehicles. We know these guys on a personal level.
They're great guys. They're great guys. And they love the brand.
They do. They truly love the brand. And, you know, they've been given a mandate. We need to sell more Jeeps. Well, you can't sell regulars to people who are going to be going back and forth to school and not take it off-road. A couple of people will, but for the most part, you need to have Jeeps that are at various levels. And frankly, they've been building Jeeps that are basically car-based for years. Think about the Patriot and the Compass. So it's a successful recipe, and they're basically trying to make better vehicles than the Compass and the Patriot. And I think they may have managed to do that with the Cherokee. Not too sure about the Renegade, because if you look at it, its proportions are rather unusual. It's actually hard to get your head around how it's going to perform off-road. But once again, we'll find that out at a later date, because for sure we're going to be taking it off-road.
So this is once again where Nathan and I agree, and we had this great chance to actually have this conversation because Jeep took us around the White Rim Trail, which is probably I would say it is the most beautiful off-road trail. It's got everything. It's got vistas, it's got rivers, it's got cliffs, it's got serpentines, right? There's nothing that this thing doesn't have. Anyway, they brought along 3 vehicles, right? They brought along a Wrangler, Rubicon, a couple of Cherokee Trailhawks, and
The Grand Cherokee Diesel.
And the Grand Cherokee Diesel. And you were in the Cherokee, which you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you drove it. How did it do?
It did great. It really loves deep sand. It just thrives in it. And the setting, when you put it on the sand setting, is fantastic. We did go up a couple rocks, didn't have much of a problem with it. I bottomed it out a few times.
That's because you were driving fast.
That's how I was driving too fast. Because its approach and departure angles aren't as good as a Wrangler or as good as the Grand Cherokee Diesel, because that thing has airbags, can lift it all the way up and get a lot of ground clearance. Now, one of the interesting things is that we got the chance to see some of the prototypes they built, and they had some Cherokees there that were lifted even higher. And I think those approach angles and departure angles and the breakover angle were much, much better. And had I had that on the trail, it would have been no problem.
Yeah, and this is once again where I disagree. I think the Trailhawk is a very competent off-road vehicle, but it's maybe at, it's a bit of 2, and the Wrangler's at a 9. You know, and I went from one to the other. So the Cherokee will do it, but it's not happy doing it. The Wrangler just eats it up. And that's because you've got the fundamentals of off-roadness in the Wrangler. You've got a solid front axle. You've got great off-road tires, even though the Cherokee also had off-road tires, right? But you've got a platform that you can make these monster Jeeps out of, which we saw, of course, in Moab as well.
Yep.
And my point is, I'm not seeing a lot of monster Cherokees. And I know it's not meant to be a monster Cherokee. It's meant to be a vehicle that you take to school with the kids, and then when the weather turns bad or you want to go to your cabin, you can use it for that, right? But that's not what the Jeep brand's about. To me, it's about, you know, big 37-inch wheels. They introduced 6 different prototype vehicles that you can actually buy using Jeep Performance parts. That was kind of cool.
It was kind of cool. Something's changed in the matrix of Jeep recently. They used to build a couple cool Halo vehicles. Yeah, sure, they weren't vehicles you could buy, but you used to be able to have a peek inside of the brain of a Jeep designer, and they had these outlandish vehicles.
We stumbled on one.
We stumbled on one. Actually, we stumbled on more than one, but one of them, yeah, we got a little hands-on time with.
The New Kaiser.
The old New Kaiser. And
you got to drive it, you bum.
Yeah, I know I did.
A diesel pickup Jeep based on a military platform. Now, how cool is that? That to me is Jeep.
That is Jeep, and they can never build something like that for the people out there. What they could do, though, is they could take little themes here and there off of something based on its popularity and say, okay, this is really good to put on a vehicle that we're going to be selling. Now, they usually every year have these really cool experimental prototypes that are just mind-blowing, and so they have a couple of those, and then they have the other ones where you can say, okay, that's Mopar / Jeep Performance parts, we can slap that on a vehicle. They don't have that.
The Mighty FC, which was there.
The Mighty FC, which they just chopped the top off of.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you take Mark Allen, one of the main designers from Jeep, and give him like 20 Red Bulls and keep him in a room. All of a sudden the Jeep just loses its top. These guys are the most creative automakers I know personally, and to stymie their creative juices is kind of a shame, but at the same time, it's cool to have these vehicles that you can look at and go, okay, all those parts I can buy and slap onto my Jeep and turn it into something different.
Yeah, but I want to see Wrangler XXL, not going the other way, right? I mean, yeah, it's really lifted, you change the color around, you put some bigger wheels on it, you know, you maybe you put some Easter eggs on it. By the way, way too many Easter eggs on that Renegade.
Oh,
my God.
You know, it's a cool looking vehicle.
To, like, cute to like obnoxious.
So, Easter eggs, what we're referring to is the front, and of course we don't have a Jeep here with all these silly toys, but the front grille of a Jeep, 7-slot grille.
Two headlights.
And the 2 headlights, they slap them on a couple vehicles here and there, and it used to be kind of tasteful and like, ooh, where is it?
Little iconic.
Little iconic here and there. Now they have like 20, and they're on the speaker grills, and they're up on the, where the mirror, the thing that holds the mirror, and they're on the back, and they're on the taillights, and they're everywhere else. They're on the wheels. All of these things that are Jeep Easter eggs are really cutesy for people who like cutesy. Jeep dudes don't like cutesy. They're like
big, powerful.
Big, mean. You know, not, oh, hey, look, there's an Easter egg right there. Yeah! That's going to really get you a beer at a party.
And the kind of the one chin-scratching moment of the whole thing was we were at the Jeep Pavilion, and they had this covered-up Jeep, and I just naturally assumed that it was Rubicon, which it wasn't. And then as we're walking out, all of a sudden Nathan points to it. It's uncovered because they're moving it, and you heard it, right? It was a Wrangler, but
it was a diesel.
It was a European diesel Wrangler, and the two security guards like swarm. They were not happy.
Warning, stop! And they were putting up our hands in front of our phones and everything else.
And don't take a picture of that.
Yeah, which we did, and it's actually out on our website. If you go to TFLtalk.com. It's with a little story next to it. And I've been doing some research, and it's quite possible that they brought the diesel Jeep there. It's a European version with the 2.8 liter four-cylinder engine. And the reason they brought it there is to actually see how it does in Moab, because that might be a diesel engine that shows up later on in Jeep vehicles. Because we already know they have the 3-liter. So this is a slightly cheaper to build engine. This is what I've been told. And it might show up in Jeeps. And if that's the case, it's awesome because it's well over 400 pound-feet of torque that it's potential.
Yeah, so that Jeep is built in America and shipped to Europe. And I asked the Jeep guys about that. I said, why is this thing here? And they said, in no way, absolutely will you construe that this Jeep is going to be sold here. We can't sell enough of the regular Wrangler, so we are not bringing diesel. And let's face it, if you're a Jeep guy, you would love that diesel. You would love it, because low-end torque is what you want when you're rock crawling. It's what you want when you're in the snow. It's what you want when you're in the dirt. And it's what that engine has.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fuel economy.
And much better fuel economy. And see, this is why I think that they're kind of not telling us the whole story, because CAFE numbers every year get more and more difficult to meet. And a company like Jeep that doesn't have any hybrids and doesn't have any electric vehicles has to maintain a certain level of those numbers. And I think by 2016, Jeep has to lower their overall numbers significantly. So I think a diesel will do that.
Yeah, but don't
hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath. But it was cool to see it there. It never was unveiled. We don't know why it was there, but it was there. And I can see that at least one fell off the truck on its way to Europe and Detroit and made it to Moab. It would be fun to drive. And the best experience of the whole week was you driving the new Kaiser. That was so cool.
Now, I was lucky
Diesel.
The diesel. I was lucky to drive the new Kaiser a couple years back. They introduced it about 4 years ago, I believe. And it was 2010. Yeah. And it was, we got to drive it over the dunes, and it was a really cool thing. So being able to come back to it and drive it was like an old friend. The thing about the new Kaiser is that it's actually built, the platform itself is a, I believe, J8 military platform. So its load capacity is something crazy like well over 2,500 pounds. You could put a howitzer in the back of it, and it could literally handle it. Massive tires, and it had, oh god, the transfer case was Atlas, and it had locking front and rear diffs, and it's just
manual locking.
Oh man, everything was manual. ARB, little buttons right there. Oh, just magnifique, and it will never be built. But it's a vehicle that a lot of Jeep guys out there could build on their own. And you'd be surprised how many components.
Carbon fiber.
Well, the carbon fiber front end, yeah. Okay. But I guarantee you, there's a company out there right now that is working on a front end that looks an awful lot like the J12 and the new Kaiser.
So, to wrap this up, Nathan, we had a really good time driving Jeeps around the White Rim Trail, checking out all kinds of modified Jeeps, because there's thousands of different Jeeps, and it's just really cool to see how deep that brand loyalty runs and how people are invested in Jeep. I mean, they live and breathe Jeep, right?
Yeah.
All these signs in welcome Jeepsters, Jeepsters discount. It was incredible. And I hope the Jeep understands that, because there are other car companies, and this is maybe my little warning to you, Jeep, there are other car companies that I'm thinking of like Saturn, which just went poof, disappeared.
Yeah, that's true. Well, while you guys are watching this, by the way, I'm going to be looking at Jeeps on the other side of the world. Literally, I'm going to be in Beijing at the Beijing Auto Show, and they're unveiling the Jeep Renegade there as well. And I'm really curious to see if it's a similar vehicle to the one we got here. I've been told it's identical.
Yeah, so we can't wait to get our paws out on it and see how off-road worthy it is. We've got some really fun ideas planned. There's a big hill that we know of here just outside of Boulder, and we're thinking we can see how high each vehicle that we test can go up that hill. If you'd like to see that, set a mark and say this vehicle got up 10 feet, this one up 15 feet, kind of a nice way to test the vehicle's true all-wheel drive capability, because I'm not convinced whether all those little buttons on the thing, snow, mud, mold, right, really make a difference.
He's referring to the Cherokee.
I'm referring to any vehicle. I'm not just referring to Jeep, Range Rover, anything that has terrain select management. I'm just not yet there that it's the best way to go. I think the old school way of just manual lockers, a lot of ground clearance, big ass tires is a way to go. And so maybe we can test that.
All right, well, we'll find out soon enough, folks.
And thanks for watching. As always, this is Roman
and Nathan
saying see you next time on TFL Talk. Ciao.
Oh, one more thing. Don't forget to go to TFLcar.com for news, views, and reviews.
Yeah, and check out the rest of the videos that we have because we've got a lot more Jeep videos for the rest of this week for our second annual Jeep Week.
That's right, baby, so enjoy it.